Think about the last thing you bought that you didn't really need. Not a disaster, just a small, easy yes. Here's the strange part. The person you know who's quietly great with money felt something in that exact moment that you didn't. A flicker of discomfort, a tiny internal no. And we explain that away with one word. Discipline. We assume they're just better at gritting their teeth while the rest of us cave, but that's not what the research shows. Being great with money often has almost nothing to do with willpower. It's something wired in deeper that most of us were never handed, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with the sign nobody expects. You'd assume someone great with money thinks about it constantly. Spreadsheets open, balances checked, every purchase interrogated. But the opposite tends to be true. The people who are best with money often barely think about it at all. And it's not because they're careless, it's because they've quietly removed money from the list of things they have to decide. Here's the trick most people miss. Every choice you make costs something. Not just money, attention. When you decide each payday whether to save, how much, which account, whether to move it, you're spending mental energy on a decision you'll have to make again next month, and the month after that, forever. And a decision you have to win every single time is a decision you'll eventually lose. Not because you're weak, because that's how the odds work. Fight the same battle 1,000 times, and the 1,000th time you're tired or it's been a hard week, or the thing in the shop window is exactly what you wanted. You cave once, and once is all it takes. The people who are good with money don't win that fight. They delete it. The savings move on their own. The day the paycheck lands, before they can feel the money arrive and start imagining what it could buy. The bills pay themselves. The investment happens automatically in the background, whether they're paying attention or not. They've taken the decision that used to need willpower and handed it to a system that never gets tired. And this is the part worth sitting with. What looks like iron discipline from the outside is usually the absence of a decision on the inside. They're not resisting temptation every day. They've built a life where the temptation never gets a vote. You think they're winning a battle you keep losing? They just stopped showing up to the battle. The second sign is stranger, and you can almost see it on their face. For some people, spending money genuinely hurts. Not as a figure of speech, as a sensation. And there's real neuroscience behind this. In 2007, a team led by Brian Knutson at Stanford, working with George Lowenstein and colleagues, put people inside a brain scanner and showed them products with prices attached, then watched what happened in the seconds before they chose to buy or not. When the price felt too high, one region lit up especially brightly, the insula, the same part of the brain that activates when you encounter something genuinely unpleasant. A bad smell, a small physical pain, a threat. And the more the insula fired, the less likely the person was to buy. The researchers could predict the decision from the brain activity before the person consciously made it. Now sit with what that means. For the people who are naturally good with money, that pain signal runs a little hotter than average. Parting with money sets off a small internal alarm. An ancient "this is a loss, be careful, it isn't pleasant," but it's protective. While the rest of us feel the clean pull of wanting the thing, they feel the wanting and a quiet ache underneath it, pulling the other way. Here's the uncomfortable part nobody mentions. This wiring often gets installed early in people who grew up somewhere money was tight and mistakes had teeth. Their brain learned young that loss was dangerous. As adults, they look enviably careful, but that carefulness has a cost, and it was paid a long time ago. The third sign changes the way they see a price tag. Most of us look at a $200 jacket and see $200. People who are good with money see something else entirely. They see hours, specifically their hours. That jacket isn't $200, it's most of a day at work, a whole morning and afternoon of their actual life, converted into fabric. And once you see a purchase that way, it becomes very hard to unsee. There's a beautiful piece of research behind this. The behavioral scientist Shane Frederick and his colleagues showed that people usually ignore what economists call opportunity cost, the thing you give up to get another thing. In one study, simply reminding people that not buying an item would leave them, quote, with extra money to spend on something else, made them noticeably less likely to buy. That's all it took. One sentence making the trade-off visible changed the decision. Most of us never see the trade-off. We see the thing we want, glowing, and the price is just a number blocking the path to it. The people who are good with money can't not see the trade-off. Their brain does the conversion automatically. $200 becomes a day of their life. A daily coffee becomes a small holiday they're choosing not to take, one sip at a time. And here's the double edge of it. That instinct protects them from 1,000 pointless purchases. It also means they sometimes can't enjoy the coffee because they're too busy pricing it in hours. The fourth sign is the one that flips everything you assume about pleasure and money. We take it as obvious that spending feels good and saving feels like sacrifice. You buy the thing, you get the little hit. That's just how brains work, right? For a lot of people, mostly, but not for everyone. Behavioral economists Scott Rick, Cynthia Kreider, and George Lowenstein mapped this out in a well-known study, sorting people along a scale between two poles they called spendthrifts and tightwads. Spendthrifts feel too little of that pain of paying, so they spend more than they'd like and regret it later. Tightwads feel too much. So they hold on even when they'd genuinely be better off letting go. And here's the reveal that matters. For the tightwad, the pleasure isn't in the purchase. It's in not making it. Watching the balance stay whole, watching the number climb, that's the reward. Their brain hands them a small hit of satisfaction for the money that didn't leave. The same way most brains reward the money that gets spent, which is a genuinely enviable piece of wiring because it points at the one pleasure that never wears off. The thrill of a new thing fades in days. The quiet satisfaction of watching savings grow never really does. They've stumbled into a source of pleasure that compounds instead of decaying. But notice what we just did there, because it sets up the last sign. We called it enviable. It isn't only that, the fifth sign is the hidden cost of all the others. You'd think that once these people were safe, once the savings were healthy and the future was covered, they'd finally exhale and enjoy it. Buy the nice thing. Take the trip. They've earned it and they can plainly afford it. But that's often exactly when the guilt shows up. They sit down to book the holiday, the money is right there, and something in them flinches, like they're doing something wrong. This is the shadow side of the tightwad wiring in that same research. These aren't people who've simply won at money. On average, they aren't even the happiest with how they handle it. The spendthrifts regret spending too much. The tightwads regret holding on too tightly. The brain that protected them for decades, that made saving feel good and spending feel dangerous, doesn't have an off switch. It doesn't quietly retire once the emergency fund is full. It keeps flinching at every pleasure, long after the danger has passed. And this is the thing almost nobody says out loud about being good with money. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. Sometimes it feels like standing guard over a fortune you never let yourself walk inside. The same instincts that build the security can quietly stop you from ever enjoying it. So if it isn't discipline, what is it? Underneath all 5 of these signs sits a single trait, and it has a name: delay discounting. It's just a measure of how much your brain shrinks a reward the further away it sits in time. Everyone discounts the future a little. $100 today feels better than $100 in a year, but some people's future barely shrinks at all. To them, the money they'll have at 65 feels almost as real, almost as present, as the money in their hand right now. And when the future feels that real, saving for it stops being a sacrifice. You're not denying yourself for a stranger. You're providing for someone you can already feel. In 2018, a researcher named William Hampton, publishing in the journal Frontiers in Psychology, ran the numbers on more than 2,000 people. He found that this one trait, delay discounting, predicted a person's income better than their age, their ethnicity, or their height. Not perfectly, but it beat things we assume matter enormously. The way your brain weighs time turns out to quietly shape your whole financial life. And here's where it gets uncomfortable and honest. Because if being good with money is partly just how your brain weighs time, then 2 things follow that nobody likes to say. First, if you've always struggled to save, you may not be lazy or broken. Your brain might simply discount the future more steeply, which means willpower was never going to fix it. But systems can. Automatic transfers, removing the decision, building the friction other people are born with. And second, that same research found the advantage shrinks once you account for the inequality people grew up inside. A brain that trusts the future is easier to build when your future was actually safe. So the person quietly great with money isn't better than you. They were handed a particular way of feeling time, and our society happens to reward it. But it came with a bill, paid in guilt, in flinching, in a coffee they couldn't fully taste. So think again about that last thing you bought, the small, easy yes. Maybe the real question was never whether you should have resisted. Maybe it's how real your future feels to you and whether you can learn to feel it before it arrives.